I know all about the challenge of transitions when I wrote my memoir, When God Says No. And so we're going to discuss those in this video. Hello, I'm Brenda, and this is my second video on how to deal with transitions in writing our memoir. Okay, now let's look at another example, also from my book, where I've used that repetition technique in order to do a transition. Now, these are slightly more advanced methods in order to do transitions, but they work really well. And one of the reasons they work so well is that they actually create this lyricism to your writing. It creates repetition and lyricism. And I personally like a lot of lyricism when I write. So this is one of the methods I find I do quite instinctively. So in this section, I'm wanting to transition from being at home, where I've been describing as a teenager some of the difficulty of growing up in my dysfunctional family home. And I really wanted to get out and move on. And I needed to move the scene now from where I've been thinking about and explaining and illustrating some of the challenges of growing up and being in the home as a teenager to now actually leaving the home. I wanted a transition that would take me from being a teenager, age 16, 17, to around 19, where I'm actually left home. And how am I going to do that? How am I now going to make this transition? And one of the ways I did it was, again, with a repetitive transition sentence. So this is what I write. I longed to leave home. I longed for a life different from the one I lived with my parents. I did the next best thing. I lived phantom-like, hiding in my bedroom with the door closed. And I read voraciously. My bedroom was my refuge from the fighting and from watching my father drink. I coped by isolating myself. I escaped into reading and daydreaming. And here comes the transition line, which is actually 2 lines because I make use of repetition. And this is how it works. If only I could get out, I would be okay, I thought. I could leave it all behind. There's the first hint, the first transition sentence. And the second transition sentence is definitive. And get out I did. At the age of 19, straight into the arms of an alcoholic boyfriend. So there you can see those are the 2 transition lines. I hint at it in the first one, I make use of it in the second one, and what links them together is the repetition of the words get out. If only I could get out. And get out I did. And also in that transition sentence, I place the reader by telling them I'm now 19 years old. So by using those 2 transition sentences, by using the repetitive technique, I move from being a teenage girl holed up in her bedroom to now being a 19-year-old young woman in a relationship with an alcoholic boyfriend. And I move on to explain that relationship. And it's all happened because of 2 sentences and making use of a repetitive transition technique. Right, one more example for you, because this is one that I really struggled with. How am I going to deal with this part of my book? How am I going to tie it all together? Because transition isn't just about moving the story along, it's also about bringing the story together. Using transitions ties it all together into a cohesive whole and brings organization and structure to your story. It's all part of developing your plot, which I will do a video on. So do subscribe and click on the notification bell so you don't miss my video on plot in memoir. Now, in the second part of my book, I talk about actually going back to spend time with my father after my mother has died. And he's in a really difficult time in his life. And really, nothing much happens in my 2 weeks with him except that we have conversations, we have dialogue, we talk about things. So when I wrote this section, I realized that I really have just these strings of dialogue. How am I going to talk about this part of my book in what has for me been a difficult part to write? When I wrote the sections on my mother, because we had a close relationship, it flowed. When it came to writing about my father, I found I had the staccato method to my writing, and I just had these memories and recollections of dialogue. And what I did with them is I set each one up as a simple little sketch story, like a little sketch scene. And I would do it by, first of all, following a little method that worked for each one. And the method was, I would do an introduction, or I would set the scene by saying where we are or what we were doing. There was some way in order to bring some direction to the dialogue for the reader. Then there would be the dialogue between my father and myself, which actually revealed something about us and our relationship, or about him, or even about me. I would add some action beats in, and that was something I got from my editor. She said, you need an action beat. You need to be showing that you're actually just doing something, so that it's not all dialogue. And then I would wrap up the scene or finish it on a very strong note. After that, I would then go on to the next dialogue and follow the same pattern, do the rinse and repeat. Some of them were just short little paragraphs, some of them were half page, some of them were even longer. And so in my book, I'm going to give you an illustration of one of them that illustrates exactly what I've explained to you now. And this is what I write. In one of our discussions, I broached the topic of death and asked Dad how long he thought he might have to live. So there's my introduction transition statement. Now comes the dialogue. He looked surprised and replied, 10 years? 2 years? I don't know. 6 months? I asked. My Uncle Reggie drank a bottle of brandy a day and lived to 81, he replied. With that comparison in his mind, Dad thought he could live another 10 years. You could also die from cirrhosis of the liver. That's a difficult and painful way to die. Your mom didn't die an easy death, he replied. No, she didn't. I dropped my gaze as the ache of missing my mother filled me. I pushed the memory of her death from my mind and reached for the next potato to peel. And that is the snapshot where I have taken a dialogue and turned it into a little sequence, a little sketch scene, and then I move on to the next one. So for example, the next sentence after that scene is, I also broached the topic of Dad moving into a retirement home. And now I go rinse and repeat into the next dialogue, the next structure. And so that is a transition technique that I've used for a number of pages in order to deal with that section of my book, which otherwise was just going to be a lot of staccato dialogue that actually wouldn't work very well. Right, so that's what I have for you today in this video on some more advanced techniques of transition in writing your memoir. These ones have been specific to my memoir, but you can do the same in your memoir by using repetition as form of a technique, or creating small sketch scenes that build one on the other in the way I did in my memoir. So do watch out for that video on plot in memoir. It's coming soon. I'll see you in that video.